with public education. 150 years ago, incredibly brave Americans said, you know what? Working class kids, low income kids should not have to work in factories or on the farms. Like rich kids, they deserve to get a free education. And that free education of extraordinary accomplishment was from first grade to 12th grade. The world has changed. This is 2016. In many ways, a college degree today is equivalent to what a high school degree was 50, 60 years ago. So yeah, I do believe that when we talk about public education in America today, in a rapidly changing world, we should have free tuition at public colleges and universities. That should be a right of all Americans.
You know, Bernie Sanders was, when he wanted to have Medicare for all and free college, and Hillary Clinton referred to those things as ponies. Everybody wants a pony. So they can't afford free college, but guess what they just did? The Senate's military spending increase alone is enough to make up public college free. They just, Trump wanted to spend an extra $55 billion over what Barack Obama spent last year in his Pentagon budget. But guess what? Congress went ahead and they said, that's not enough, Trumpy. So they decided to spend $700 billion more dollars like that. $700 billion more dollars. Now, how much would it cost for free college? It would cost roughly, some people say $45 billion, some people say $65 billion. So let's say 65, take the high number. $65 billion. They could have had that like that. We could all have free college right now because, so those concerns about paying for all that stuff, those concerns were brushed aside Monday night as the Senate overwhelmingly approved an $80 billion annual increase, which turns out to be a $700 billion increase. So $80 billion every year. $80 billion annual increase in military spending, enough to fully satisfy Sanders' campaign promise of free college.
Another Bernie Sanders candidacy to me is an answer to a question nobody's asking.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senator Bernie Sanders.
No, it's not surprising.
That's true for me.
It's true.
I still live at home.
Students are coming out with too much debt. It's too expensive to go to school. And of course they're going to be living with their parents if they can't get a job. I mean, they're going to have to pay off that debt. And it's extreme. And you have to make some hard sacrifices to pay off $30,000 or $60,000.
Sometimes I know students have parents who just can't help them, they can't support them, or they kind of push them out into the world and want them to be responsible for everything themselves.
They've gotten used to being taken care of. It's a very spoiled generation.
Back in our day, you went to high school, you decided what you're going to do, and then you got out and you got a job, and you're expected to get out of the house and work.
We're expecting a lot more from the students. We used to expect that student tuition was 11% of the U's budget. Today, we expect student tuition contribute 23% of the U's budget. Millennials, please stop believing the myth and the propaganda that your generation is somehow soft or not as tough as the people who graduated from high school in the 1980s or early 90s. Your generation is facing financial adversity my generation never faced. I looked up information regarding what did college tuition cost at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. This is 4 years of tuition for a BA degree adjusted for inflation to $2010, and I looked at various years. I went to old University of Minnesota Twin City campus bulletins that are archived online, and here's what I found. And what I found daggers the argument your generation is somehow soft. In 1956, 4 years of tuition at the U was $1,680 in 1956 dollars. Adjusted for inflation, that's $13,739 for 4 years of tuition at the University of Minnesota. By 1965, the year my dad could have gone to college, I'm 49 years old. My dad's 72. He would have paid $255 for tuition per year. For 4 years, that was $1,200. He would have paid $7,000 of tuition, adjusted for inflation to 2010 dollars in 1965. Here's my generation. I was expected to pay $14,052 for 4 years of tuition at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus. My children are expected to pay roughly 3 times more, $41,280. This information's accurate. I have an economics degree, and I teach college-level economics and history at Minnesota Public High School. Millennials, you're being robbed. And the next part of this video explains why your generation is being asked to pay more for college. Roughly 3 times what my generation was being expected to pay, and roughly 6 times what my father's generation was being expected to pay for college. It's ridiculous. Don't believe the propaganda. It's not your fault. Rise up.
So before we let Dr. Phil go, we wanted to ask him about entitlement culture in this nation and what it means for us. And boy, did he have a prime example for us. Watch this. Tomorrow you have a show, and it taps right into some of the things we've been discussing on the Kelly File, which is this culture of fame, of narcissism, of obsessed with the camera, and what are you going to do for me? How is it all about me? And you introduce us to a lovely man by the name of Chris. Tell us a little bit about him before we show him the clip.
This is a perfect example, and this is the reason I'm doing this, because we do have a generation that I think we have raised with a great degree of entitlement, where it's like the world owes me a living. And we picked a perfect example story of a kid that says, I want to be a rock star. I say, kid, he's now 40 years old. I want to be a rock star. And has basically tried to buy fame, has bled his family, his mother and father, for $1.7 million. $1.7 million trying to be a rock star. I mean, he's got the poses, he's got the haircut, he's got everything, but so entitled that he is.
Teddy Roosevelt 2019 is someone who's in his late 40s, early 50s, and I'm tired of the media and politicians acting like expensive college is inevitable. It is not inevitable. It's a political choice we've been making since the 1970s. We've been making the choice to make this generation of students pay 5 to 7 times more for college than my grandparents had to pay. And we're forcing you, people of my children's generation, to pay 2 and 3 times more for college than my wife and I were expected to pay. And the data is right here. In 1991, the state of Minnesota funded higher education to the tune of $12,000 per pupil to lower the cost of tuition. They have reduced that funding by half by 2013. We're spending $6,000 less per student to make college tuition affordable.
A new series about millennials called My Generation. They're people who were born between the early 80s and mid-90s. They make up the largest living generation, bigger than baby boomers and Generation X. Diana Goladriga met some millennials to get their reactions to stereotypes about them.
They're a group from across the country featuring 3 millennials, aged 30 to 34, and 3 younger millennials, ages 23 to 27. We met them at the New York City bar Porchlight to learn what unites and what divides them. There are a lot of stereotypes. Some are true, maybe some not so true, about what people say about millennials. I'm going to ask you if you agree or disagree. Millennials are entitled.
I agree with that.
Yes,
agree.
Definitely agree.
Why do you agree?
I think we've been conditioned to get used to being comfortable with things coming to us quickly, things being more convenient for us, getting things quicker.
Well, you led me into my next question. Millennials are lazy.
No, I don't agree with that.
I don't agree with that.
I disagree. I disagree with that. I work a full-time job and then I come home and then I run a business.
That's why I think that we're not entitled, is because of that entrepreneurial spirit that millennials have. I think we're one of the hardest working generations because of the country that was left to us. We have to be.
Here's another table that shows that your generation is being asked to pay more for college than my generation. I was going to college in 1991. Average Minnesota tuition at a four-year public school was $4,000. Now it's more than 2.5 times as much. And that's in 2013. It's even higher now. I believe this graph shows an additional reason why college tuition has gotten so much more expensive at the University of Minnesota. In 1977, the state of Minnesota had 10% of its revenue each year come from corporate income taxes. By definition, corporations cannot vote, and corporate income taxes used to make up 10% of our budget. Personal income taxes used to make up 25% of our state budget. Over time, the money collected from corporate income taxes has gone down from 10% to 5%, and the burden has been shifted onto personal income taxes. Used to be 25%, now it's 37%. As voters have felt squeezed by this increase in income taxes, they've been less willing to vote for politicians to support programs like keeping tuition affordable at the University of Minnesota.
The millennial generation has been stereotyped at times by some people as maybe lazy or perhaps entitled, but one BuzzFeed reporter disagrees with that.
She is calling millennials the burnout generation, with the stress caused by several factors like anxiety, work ethic, and even childhood.
Here's some additional information why college is so expensive today. The University of Minnesota spends way more money per pupil than they used to. In 1965, there were 42,000 students enrolled at the U, and their entire budget was $108 million in 1965 dollars. They were spending $2,571 per student to educate the student in the University of Minnesota system back in 1965. I adjusted that for inflation, and in 2017 dollars, that was $20,000 per student per year. Now the U is spending roughly almost 3 times more per student. There's 66,800 students enrolled at the University of Minnesota. Their budget is $3.8 billion. They're spending $56,800 per student today. Why are they spending so much more money per student? Why are they spending almost 3 times more per student? Some say it's professor salary. The profs make too much money. That's not true. Professor salary in 1969, if you adjust the average associate professor salary for inflation to 2017 dollars, is $74,000 a year. Today, associate professors make $89,000 a year. So yes, professors make slightly more than they used to. But you'll see later in the video that the U is spending a lot more money per student per year, and it's not going to the professors.
Y'all, I gotta vent again. I am so tired of these young, lazy-ass, spoiled, rotten American kids. Like teenagers, young adults, 21, around that age. I'm so sick of their victim mentality, and I'm so tired of them just being these lazy-ass, irresponsible people that expect to have everything.
This is a deep look at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus budget. In 1965, they had 42,000 students enrolled, and they were spending, adjusted for inflation, $854 million a year at the U. Their 2017 budget reflects today they're spending roughly 4 times more per student. So the University of Minnesota is spending a lot more money per student. Where is that money going? I can only speculate because I haven't done a deeper dive into the budget. But I do know at the university today, compared to 1965, there's more programs, more services, more deans, more associate deans. A friend of mine teaches. He is a professor in the Department of Education. He's also the chair of the department. He teaches 2 classes a year. He teaches 17 students twice. Once fall semester, and his average class size is roughly 17 students, once spring semester. How can we afford a system where a professor teaches fewer than 40 students a year? That kind of nonsense did not go on back in the 60s. Furthermore, college campuses are palaces compared to what they used to be in the 60s. I went to college in 1988 to 1992. In my dorm room, I went to a college that was part of the University of Minnesota system. There was not even a phone in my room, or a TV hookup, or a cable jack. So we had very Spartan living conditions. Today, most dorm rooms have air conditioning, cable hookups, high-speed internet hookups, and I'm not saying they're bad things, but we're spending a lot more money making college much more amenable through luxury items we didn't used to have when we went to college. On top of that, this is the main idea for this particular part of the video. We're expecting a lot more from the students. We used to expect that student tuition was 11% of the U's budget. Today, we expect student tuition contribute 23% of the U's budget. Well, if we're spending 4 times more for education at the U, and we're expecting students to contribute twice as much as they used to, is it any surprise that student tuition has risen 5 to 7 times roughly more than